Hi, welcome to the Staple Tea Knit Along. Um, Let me just check on something real. So I am live. Okay. Whew. This is my first time ever doing a live stream, and this is also my first knit along that I'm ever hosting. So if you're here, thank you. I appreciate it. And sorry, with all of that out of the way, my name is Jeanette, and I'm the person behind New Wave Knitting, and I'm the host of this knit along. I specialize in designing knitting patterns that allow you to use any weight yarn and any gauge. Um, Sorry, I'm like already excited because there's someone saying hello in the comments. Hi, Busy Beaver Brooke. Hi, so-called crafts. But yeah, so I specialize in designing made-to-measure knitting patterns, let you use any yarn, and that let you skip all the math. My patterns, there's a few that still need updating, the beanie patterns, I think in particular. But all of my other patterns are interactive, meaning that you can just plug in your gauge, plug in your measurements, and all of the math is automatically populated throughout the pattern exactly where you need it to be. Um, so if you are here and you're joining live, you probably know all about this already. So thank you so much for being here, everyone. Hi, Deb from St. Paul, Minnesota. Um, Oh, this is so sweet. I got someone from London, Noni, Susan from Wallingford, Pennsylvania, Amber from Ontario, Canada. Thank you all so much for being here. So, the purpose of today's live stream is to kind of go into all of the details for the knit along, as well as to go through the pattern itself, just as like a little pattern tour, up until the actual pattern part of the pattern. We'll be tackling all the things within the pattern in terms of knitting the tee each week. But for today, I just know my knitting patterns are a little bit different than what most people are used to knitting with. So I wanted to go through all of the different sections and help with some different things like measuring or answer any questions that you might have. Um, but to start, I think we should start with just talking about the knit along in general. So again, Staple Tee knit along. So I am wearing the Staple Tee right now. I have it a little bit cropped. That's not necessary. But the Staple Tee is a knitted raglan tee. It's worked from the top down, so there's no seaming to do at the end. Sorry, I'm like trying to figure out where I am on the camera. Again, it allows you to use any weight yarn. It's made to measure. One unique thing about this design is that it, with most raglan patterns, if you've knitted a raglan top before, you've probably made one like this, where you increase the body in the sleeves at the same exact time. And I know that that can cause issues for some people, especially people with like larger bust sizes, because when you keep increasing them both at the same time, you can end up with larger sleeves than you might like. So what makes this design a little bit unique is that you increase the body and the sleeves separately, which actually can be a little confusing, which is why I want to kind of go through the pattern again today too. And we'll obviously be tackling how to do your increases together so that we all do it well. I also want to pause because I wanted to mention, at the beginning I said, this is my first hosting of a knit along. This is also my first live stream. And in the Discord chat, a lot of you have mentioned that this is your first knit along that you're attending, or it's your first garment that you're knitting. So there's a lot of firsts going on here, and I want to make sure that you all know that that's totally okay. You do not need to be an expert to be in this knit along. Like we're all learning together on this, which I think is pretty cool. It makes me feel better because yeah, I feel a little like, I don't know, it's a little different to be doing this live stream, but I'm really excited about it. So Sorry, I'm just looking at the comments. Oh, I'm assuming this is in response to the different increasing the sleeves and body separately. So glad that you're here for it. Um, and yeah, okay, cool. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure. I don't want you to feel overwhelmed by this at all if you are a newer knitter. Because again, we'll be tackling this all together. It's going to be a good time. Don't stress about it. Okay, so that's what we'll be knitting is the staple tee. Now, I am also going to go over some of the other details that's going on in the knit along. And I actually created a blog post on all of the details just to kind of lay them out in one place for you to reference as needed. So that is linked in the description below, but I'm also going to share screen and we're just going to talk about it and go through it together. So let me present. And also, so many of you are already commenting and stuff, which is amazing. If you want, I would also love to see if you want to comment if you're watching live, hashtag team live. And then if you are watching the replay of this, because I'm hoping that people who find the staple tee down the road or whatever, if they want some support with watching this as they knit up the pattern, you can, if you're watching this later, comment team replay. So that way I just kind of know who's who. Nice, team live. All right. Okay, so let me share screen and let's just go through the blog post together. So share screen, share screen. You obviously don't know what I am looking at as I'm saying share screen. Window, Staple Tee KAL. There we go. Share. Okay, so if you go to my website, again, link in description below, but if you go to newwaveKnitting.com/Staple Tee KAL, staple T KAL, I'm going to be putting up like little reminders or little blog posts each week that kind of break down what we talked about in the lives, while also linking the YouTube videos there. So that will be a great hub for you to reference as you need throughout the knit along. Right now I've got two. This one has all of the details in it, and then we'll talk about this one in a little bit. Also, just so you know, my goal is to have the live streams be about an hour long. I don't want to take up too much of your Sunday, and I think an hour is a good enough time to dive into all the details and all of that, but we'll see where we end up today. So let me actually move my little thing over here. Sorry, just getting set up. Okay, cool. Just in case any comments come in. I only have one screen at the moment, so it's a little bit of a juggle. But that looks pretty good. Okay, so in case you don't know what a knit along is, I give a little description here. I also kind of go over a bit more about the pattern. So just to emphasize, there isn't really there's no set sizes with this pattern. It's all made to measure. It's all based on your unique body measurements because I'm super passionate about this, but everyone's body is different, right? And I just think creating things that are made to measure makes things perfect for you. I feel like there's nothing worse than knitting up a pattern and the designer's bodies might have been different than yours or made assumptions about bodies. And this kind of takes away those assumptions and allows your finished object to fit you as it should fit you. So again, made to measure. Use any yarn, no math needed. I give more tips on like what you need for needles and notions in the pattern, so we'll go over that soon. And I do say this pattern is ideal for confident beginner knitters and up. Again, because of the way we increase the body in the sleeves, it does get a little complicated. If you're a brand new knitter, then you might be a little overwhelmed by it. But if you are feeling confident, if you're feeling ambitious, if you want to learn, then this is a good pattern for you. And of course, any level above as well. I've got some examples of test knitters here who have made their staple tees. Oh, and this reminds me, you need the pattern, right? So you can access the pattern on Ravelry and Etsy. And today is the last chance to get 25% off the Staple Tee pattern on those platforms. So if you use coupon code that you get, I almost said what it was, but you get it when you sign up for the knit along. Today is your last chance, basically, to sign up, get that coupon code, and use it. So I have the links to the pattern on Ravelry and Etsy in the description. So head on over there if you haven't gotten the pattern yet, and get that 25% off coupon. It's like $2.50 USD. So it's a nice little thank you for signing up. Okay, and so now here is the nitty gritty on the knit along itself. So with this knit along, I'm going to be updating you when you sign up. You'll be into my email list. So I'll email you weekly updates, like breakdown. Like my plan is on Wednesdays, I'll send you an email that has a link to the live in case you missed it, as well as to the blog post that breaks down what happened in the live. And it will let you know like a heads up for what we're going to be covering on the next live as well. And I'll send out another reminder email on Saturdays, I think is my plan, to say like, hey, this is what we're talking about tomorrow. Here's the link again. Can't wait to see you there. That kind of deal. We also, once you sign up, you get access to a Discord chat, which has been bumping. So we have currently, I'm going to share a little bit more about the Discord later. But right now we have 144 people, around 150 people in the Discord. And typically I get overwhelmed with chats, but I have to say, like, it's not overwhelming. There's a good conversation, but it's not like 50 texts per day kind of thing in the Discord. There's different channels for different things too. I've got it set up. So there's like a chat channel, there's a pattern question channel, there's a progress pics channel. So it's like all kind of built out. So there's different channels for different things. If you only want to be in the chat, or if you only want to use it to ask questions, I'm trying my best to get back to people as quick as I can in there. So it's a great resource to have if you want to have a little bit more of an immediate access rather than just through email. But email is totally cool too. But either way, you get access to both when you sign up. And of course, you get easier access to the live streams when you sign up, because I'll be sending you those links so you don't miss out. Let me also go over a little bit of the calendar here. So right now, just the knit along overview, getting started, reviewing the pattern. That's our goal for today. And next week, we will do our swatch together, where we'll be swatching in the round. And I know that is so fun. And I know everyone is dying to do that together. So very excited for that. And then we just kind of break it down each week. So week after that, we're going to do our cast on together, and we're going to do our colorful together. Week after that is going to be, I will say that June 16th, this one is going to be the most difficult part of the pattern. But after that, it's like smooth sailing. But learning how to do your German short rows and starting the increase plan at the same time is a little overwhelming. Luckily, though, that section is super short. Like, it's also the quickest part of the pattern. So don't fret too much about that. We'll do that together. It'll be good. I'm actually thinking June 23rd, that we'll just focus on doing the body, where we separate the sleeves and start the body. Because the body takes the longest, I'm thinking we'll do another body section on June 30th, and we'll just kind of use that time to knit together. You can ask questions, if you're behind, if you're ahead, whatever. July 7th, we'll do sleeves. No call on July 14th. It's my mom's birthday. So we're going to try to plan to do something. She lives in upstate New York. I'm in the DMV area in Virginia. So one of us is going to travel to each other. That's the goal. So no call that day. July 21st, we're going to be doing the hems for like the sleeves and the hem of the shirt, and weaving in our ends. And then July 28th is final celebration and prizes. So with talking about prizes, let's go over what those prizes are. So altogether, there are 5 prizes. There will be 5 winners. And I'm thinking how we'll do that is we'll do a random, basically, if you finish your Staple Tee, I'll go over how to become eligible for prizes in a second. But if you do all the things, it'll be a randomized selection of who are the eligible prize winners. And I think what we'll do is like the person who gets selected first gets first pick of what the prize they get is. And then the second person gets the second, they get choice second. Third person gets the choice after that. So that way it kind of helps people get more of what they want, I think, rather than just saying first prize is this, second prize is that. I really love choices. I don't know if you picked up on that with wanting to use any weight yarn in my patterns, but I love choice. So anyway, here are the prizes. We have 6 skeins of In Bloom fingering weight yarn from Arcane Fiberworks. Now, Arcane Fiberworks has beautiful hand-dyed yarn. I highly recommend you check them out. I have a 10% off coupon, I believe. And if you head to the description below, I've linked them. I'm an affiliate for them, just so you know. They actually gifted me this yarn a while back, and I love it. But I just don't think I'm going to be knitting with it. So I'd rather give it to someone who is going to be super excited for it. So this is the In Bloom yarn. And you'll see it's like this beautiful orange with some green. That pink is really lovely. And I originally picked out this colorway too when they were gifting it to me because I love greens, I love blues, I love a little splash of pink, but I just don't see myself. I've kind of learned that like when it comes to variegated yarn, I'm kind of picky. So anyway, that Judy, I saw you just say, what's that name? This is In Bloom by Arcane Fiberworks. So that 6 skeins is up for winning. Another prize is 5 skeins of this, which is City Skyline is the colorway. It's also fingering weight yarn, and it's also from Arcane Fiberworks. And it is moody and beautiful. Lots of blues again, which I love. And this, sorry, I'm like over here. This kind of darker color here that's kind of spread out throughout it is kind of a dark brown, actually. Which is really pretty. I just feel like I like the blue, like I'd rather have it more black or gray or something. If I were to wear it, I just feel like I'm not going to end up wearing this very much. So 5 skeins of this, and this one again is City Skyline from Arcane Fiberworks. So those are 2 of the prizes. A third prize, which I think is the best prize, are a set of either, it's your choice, the winner's choice, of either a fixed knitting needle set from Collage Square Needles or a DPN set from Collage Square Needles, which is a value of $150. And I love Collage Square Needles. This is an interchangeable needle set from them. So not exactly what you would be getting, but just so you kind of understand like what they are a little bit, they are square knitting needles. So this is, again, the interchangeable needle set, so I don't have these hooked up to cables, and they're gold. I think the other ones are typically silver. Sorry, my webcam kind of sucks. You can't really see. Let me get a bigger set of needles. But regardless, they're square. And the reason why they are square is not to just be cool or different or quirky, but because they are more ergonomic, so they're easier on your hands and wrists. So just as a little background, I got a repetitive motion injury a few years back from knitting too much. So I am very like cautious of making sure I do my stretches and things, because literally I ended up having to go to physical therapy. I had to wear a splint on my arm for 3 months. I couldn't knit for 4 months basically. And when I could start knitting again, it was at for 10 minutes at a time, and I had to slowly build up. So that sucked. And these needles, I was really skeptical when I first got my first set or pair of needles from them. But I was going to be knitting with something with cotton, and cotton is what caused my injury. So because it's a little different than wool. It doesn't have as much elasticity. So I guess it takes more concentration on your hands and fingers to knit with. Super interesting, I know. But yeah, so I was going to start knitting something with cotton again. It was my first time knitting with cotton after my injury. And I wanted to try out these needles. And I typically, when I would knit with cotton, I'd have to like knit for a little bit and then I would take a break because my arm, I would start feeling it get tingly and stuff. So, but when I was working with these needles, I didn't have to take breaks at all. I didn't find any pain at all. And not saying that it'll work for everyone, but it worked for me. So I stand by them. I really like them. I am also an affiliate for them, which I'm really grateful for because I love to promote them. So you can also, if you just want to shop on your own, link in description below. But yes, one of the prizes is either a fixed needle set from them or a DPN needle set. Megan V, she's tried some hexagonal needles at a festival and they were amazing. Really, I haven't tried the hexagonal ones before, but I've heard that they're actually possibly even better because there's like more points for you to focus on or something. I'm not quite sure. But I've heard that those work really well as well. And if you do have also experienced knitting pain, I recommend giving it a shot. It doesn't like help to take the pain away. It kind of helps to prevent the pain from happening. So if you're already experiencing pain, then you got to take a chill pill and like put your needles down for a little bit, unfortunately. But if you want to prevent pain from happening, then these could be something to help you with that. Oh, cool. Some of my Knit Pro interchangeables are square and they are amazing. I'm glad that I've heard that Knit Pro's square needles are pretty good too. Oh, cool, Susan. Love knitting with square needles. Cool, I'm glad that you're going to be trying it, Katie. Yeah, definitely give it a shot. Yes, I do love that too, McKinney. Collage supports employment for people with disabilities, which is really awesome. Oh, and Megan, so cool. She's familiar. So I also wrote a blog post on that whole story with some stretches included. So I'll link that after. Let me make a note of that. But I'll link that in the description below for other stuff that I mentioned, because it is a really popular blog post that people find really helpful. So thank you for bringing that up, Megan. And I'm glad that you found it helpful. Okay, other prizes are, we have two more. One is 2 sets or 2 row counters from Twice Your Cheap. So I have a couple I wanted to show you. I use these with every single knitting project of mine, and they're like $20-something each. So yeah, value of $42. But basically what they are, it's a chain of numbers, right? And I'll kind of show you as I start knitting, like in the other live streams, because like, I'll be using these as well as some of their other notions. But basically you can like keep knitting, and then like as you knit around, then you just hop over to the next chain and keep going like that. And when you get to, say you knit all the way from 0 and you knit all the way around back to like the tens place, they have these little clips on here. I think they call them melody clips. Sorry, it's kind of hard to see. But basically it's a little clip and you can move them around to mark your tens place. So really, these little counters help you to count up to 100 rows of your stitching. So I personally, like, if you have to count rows, like I don't need to count rows anymore because I just use these. And they have different styles too. So this one I think is a large, and it fits, you know, I forget what the needle sizes are, maybe like 5 millimeters to something. But they also have small ones for like sock needles, or like, you know, 2 millimeters that have smaller chain holes. I think this one's probably a medium. And so this one, I prefer the circle chain row markers personally, because the other ones that aren't circles are these super long chains. And this is just personal preference. But I find when I'm knitting, this just gets in the way a lot. But just wanted to show you, they do have 2 different options for that. So, and they also have these cute charms on the end. So this one's a little fox. I think I got this with a special like seasonal box from them, like a surprise gift box. but they have really cute different charms. Anyway, I love using these as well as their other notions. So 2 of those will be up for winning. And then the last one is 3 other knitting patterns from me. So I have other knitting patterns other than the staple tee, like the staple sweater and the staple sock. And so this winner would get 3 other knitting patterns from me. So to enter for prizes, you have to be signed up for the Staple Tee Knit Along. You have to finish your Staple Tee and submit a photo of your finished tee to Discord or email to be entered into the prize draw. There's also options or opportunities for bonus entries where if you knit more than 1 tee, amazing, honestly, then you can submit additional photos and get additional entries. Also, if you share it on Instagram with the hashtag Staple Tee KAL, that's a bonus entry. I think I'm also going to add to this too, where you get a bonus entry if you make a project on Ravelry, because I would love to see more projects for this tee on Ravelry because I think it's an amazing pattern, and that would help it get more visibility too. So I might add that as another bonus entry opportunity. And then winners will be drawn again at random on our Knit Along live stream on July 28th. And even if you're not able to make the live stream, don't worry, you can still win. Again, I think we're going to do that kind of selection process where I'll just kind of randomly select 5 winners, and then I'll kind of reach out to them and see what's their first pick and so on. And then I'll communicate and we'll get it all figured out. So any questions right now in terms of what's going on with the knit along? We're about to talk about the pattern in more detail, but does anyone have any questions about how to join? Anything at all? I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen right now. There we go. Okay, let me look through the comments. Thank you, Tight Knit community. I'm glad that you're happy about the prizes. Oh, and I think Katie said this about the chain marker in the round from Toy Shared Sheep. Cool. I know I'm terrible at counting rows too. Do you have a way of calculating how much? Oh, yes. Okay. So good question, Patricia. I was going to kind of like mention this after, but basically, there is a pattern update that's going to be coming this week. I was hoping to have it all set and ready for everyone before the knit along started, but in case you don't know, I work a full-time job, and the person who helps me to automate the patterns also works a full-time job. So it just hasn't worked out, but I think I should be able to send out the pattern this week. So with the pattern update, I'm going to show you what I'll give you kind of clue of what that looks like later. I'll kind of just give you a tease, and I'll let you know how you can access the update when it arrives. But in this pattern update, it does allow you to calculate how much yarn you will need based on your swatches. So that in the current pattern, it does not allow you to do that. And the new pattern that's coming to you this week, it does let you do that. And don't worry, you don't have to pay extra for the update or anything. I'll tell you how you get the pattern update. Basically, if you purchased it on Ravelry, you will automatically get the pattern update emailed to you, and your Ravelry library will automatically update. If you purchased it on Etsy, then you will, I'm going to send out an email about this as well. So you could respond to that email when it comes with the update. But you can also email me at Jeanette@newwaveKnitting.com with just maybe a subject like staple skirt update. And just let me know your Etsy order number, and I'll just email you back with the update. So that's how you'll get the update, and I'll share more about that later. But in the update, yes, there is a yarn calculator, which I am really, really excited about. Deb, are all of these lives recorded? Yes, they are. So this will be available on YouTube tomorrow. forever. So even for people who find the pattern a few years from now, they could even come to these videos and watch them. So yes, they are all recorded. And the links that I've shared with you, like all of this will be live on YouTube. It's all good. Is the intended order for the schedule that we learn with you and then work on that part of the pattern, or work on that part of the pattern and then watch the live stream? That is a great question. I recommend if you're like, if you are really confident in like knitter and you're like, girl, I've got this, I don't need to learn from you, I just kind of want to be a part of the live stream, then you can do whatever the heck you want. If you want some support, if you're like, okay, I haven't done this technique before, then yeah, come to the live stream. Like we'll work on it together. That's kind of my thought process, is I'm kind of here for those people who maybe are knitting their first garment or haven't done a pattern like this and want to learn how to do German short rows and stuff like that. So yeah, I suggest if you aren't like, if you want to learn and you want support as you are knitting it, then come to the live stream ready to work on it together and to learn together. So I hope that answered your question. Katie, no questions, but I want to say that this feels like school in the best way. Syllabus lecture setting us up for success for the next few months. So funny that you said that, because I don't know if all of you know this. I mentioned it in an email that I sent out recently, but I actually used to be a teacher. I was an 8th and 10th grade English teacher, and I quit that after a year. But I do really love to teach. I love to learn. So I am really excited to be applying my teaching skills to this knit along. It's like meant to be. So that is really funny that you said that, Katie. Cool. It looks like Tight Knit Community is agreeing with that. Cool. Cool. Okay, so if you have other questions, you can keep going in the chat. Feel free to make some friends in the chat too, by the way. And let's dive into the pattern already. Like, enough just talking about it. Let's do it. So let me share screen. Stop screen, and then present, share screen. Sorry, we're learning over here. Window, here we go. All right, so this is, sorry, let me go to the top. Okay, so this is the pattern that is currently out to everyone. I'll give you a little sneak peek of what the updated pattern looks like, which is right here afterwards. But yeah, so if you have your pattern with you, feel free to look through it. If you haven't bought the pattern yet, you're still welcome to kind of go through this with me. So it starts, because this pattern is interactive, and I'll show you what that looks like soon. It's definitely different than other patterns that you have knitted with before. So this just kind of gives you a little explanation of how this pattern works with the input fields for the gauge and measurements. Also, I highly recommend that you open this pattern in Adobe Reader. So Adobe Reader is the free app. You do not need to pay for it. And what was I going to say? I have links here if you want to get the app on your phone. And there's also an app for your computer. I'm currently looking at this in Adobe Acrobat Reader. Also, I think the full name of the thing is Adobe Acrobat Reader, but some people just call it Adobe Acrobat or Adobe Reader. It's all the same thing from what I understand. I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But all you need to know is that it's the free version. I wouldn't expect you guys to pay for an app in order to access a knitting pattern. So right under that, we've got a table of contents. And I've included a table of contents because it is a lengthier pattern. I like to give as many details as possible. I think, being an 8th and 10th grade teacher, I try to anticipate all the questions that people have, and through the test knitting process, any questions that testers have, I try to answer those all in the pattern itself in a way, so that way, as you're knitting, you don't need to, basically, if you have a question, it's answered in the pattern. That's kind of my goal. And so I've included a table of contents because it is quite lengthy. And just so you know, these are all hyperlinked. So if you're just opening up the pattern and you're just like, okay, I'm ready to go to the pattern itself, you can just click pattern and it just brings you right down to the pattern. So that way you don't have to scroll. But just as a little note there. Then we get into about the tee. So this just kind of gives you a little detail about what the tee is. And we've kind of already talked about this, although one thing I forgot to mention is that there is a small amount of positive ease. So that means like if you're like for me, my bust measurement is 34. So my finished tee will have a bust measurement of 36 or between 36 and 37. So as I say here, there's about 2 to 3 inches of positive ease depending on your size, on your bust size. So it's percentage based. So that way, ideally, everyone gets a well-fitted tee. Because I don't know if you're familiar with other top patterns, but typically, you know, if there is a sweater that has, or a t-shirt that has 2 inches of positive ease, but say size, you know, medium only covers, or like we'll say size small, covers like 32 to 34 inches. We'll say like if you have a bust that is between 32 inches and 34 inches, you're knitting size small. But the finished object has a 2-inch positive ease. The 2-inch positive ease would make sense for the bust with 32 inches. They'll have an extra 2 inches. But for the bust that has 34 inches, it's kind of like 0 ease. So having this percentage base just makes it so like everyone should have the final fit be right for them based on their measurements. I hope that makes sense. But basically, yeah. We've got also matching folded collar, sleeves, and hem detail. The length is totally customizable, by the way. I saw some people in the chat saying like, oh, I'm gonna not make it cropped or whatever. Really, make it as long as you want. You're just knitting the body straight down. So it is super easy to customize the length. You can also customize the length for the sleeves, and we'll talk about that more as we get to the sleeves section. But I personally think that short sleeves does work the best with this. So it also has really nice neck shaping, and that is from the German short rows that we'll be tackling together. And that's what caused it. So basically that means that the neck dips down a little bit compared to the back. So you kind of know which one's the front, and it just has really nice shaping around the neck. Also, fun fact, you can sell garments made from this pattern, but if you do so, then you just have to credit me as the designer. Just, I know people have questions about that sometimes. Okay. Also, if you have any questions as I'm going along, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm kind of going back and forth and checking on them. So, for sizing and fit, we've kind of already gone over this. Length is customizable, positive ease, blah, 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 blah. Materials. Okay, so needle size is a little tricky because you can use any weight yarn. So I do recommend you use circular needles for the pattern. And I recommend using, I'm just going to read from this because I've already like analyzed how I want to word this nicely. So I recommend using a needle size that creates a nice fabric with the yarn you've chosen to work with. If you're not sure what needle size to go with, try the recommended needle size on your yarn's label or check out this resource, which links you to, I think it's like average needle size for each yarn weight kind of resource. Also, I just want to encourage people, like this is a pretty basic tee pattern. One thing I forgot to mention too is that it doesn't have any bust shaping and it doesn't have any waist shaping, at least yet. So it is just knit straight down after you split the sleeves. So just that's kind of an important note, especially for people with larger busts. But I plan on adding those things into the pattern in the future, just so you know. But I was gonna say something. Oh, I want you to be creative with this in terms of like the yarn. Like for example, like this is obviously like a pretty regularly, I'm using like a slub. I used a slubby yarn for this here. This was knit with Galler Yarns Inca Eco Organic Cotton, and it's kind of like a slubby textured yarn. It's lovely. But you could also use like a few strands of mohair and like do it super like have a large like loose gauge and make a really airy top. Like there's so many options that you can play around with for this. I'm just going to take a minute to answer a couple of questions that came through. So Amber asked, what if you want more or less positive ease than the pattern default? Is that possible? Yes, it is possible. So I would suggest that if you really are like, I want more than 2 inches or more than 3 inches, then you can just put in your bust measurement as a little bit larger. Same for your sleeves. So because your sleeves are increased independently, you can say that if you want looser sleeves, you could say that your arm measurement is 1 inch or 2 larger or something like that. No promises on how it's going to turn out, but that should do the trick. If you know, like, yeah, I'd prefer to have 5 inches, then add 5 inches or add like 3 inches to your bust because I'm already going to work in 2 inches of positive ease. I think that makes sense. But yeah, so just add on and play with it there in your measurements. Is there a way to have a slightly lower neckline? So yes, I think what you could do is when we get to the German short row section is you will likely be able to, it depends. Some people like run out of stitches in the middle here as we work them, but sometimes you have some extra stitches there and you can keep doing the German short rows until you run out of stitches basically. And that would create a slightly lower neckline, but we can talk about that more when we get to the German short rows too. Let me just see. I cannot imagine feeling good enough about my handiwork ever. Sell things I've made. Oh, enlisted family. I feel like you create beautiful things, and honestly, we need that confidence to go up. I feel like your stuff is, if you wanted to sell your stuff, you could sell your stuff. Maybe entering a small, oh yes, perfect. So-called crafts, you nailed it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the pattern. We're talking about needles. So in terms of needle sizes, you will need 3 different needle sizes. Needle size 1 is your main working needle size that you will use to achieve gauge. So that is what we're going to be using for our gauge swatch. Then needle size 2 is 0.5 millimeters smaller than needle size 1. And we use needle size 2 for the outside of our collars and our hems for both the sleeves and the bottom of the shirt. Needle size 3 is 1 millimeter smaller, than needle size 1. And I just tripped up because I just remembered I gave someone a wrong information in the Discord about something. But basically, needle size 1 is what we use on the inside of the collar hem, of the collar and the sleeve hems and the t-shirt hems. And the reason why we do that is because of these, they're not ribbed. There's no ribbing, it's just stockinette. And having that slightly smaller needle size, we found this in the testing process, makes it so that the hems like don't flare out. The slightly smaller needle size, the stitches kind of like pull in a little bit. So that way the hem just like sits really nicely. So that's why we have those 3 different needle sizes. And then for cord lengths, it's really handy, obviously, to have interchangeable needle sets for this, but I totally understand that those are not in everyone's price range or ability to have. But if you do have an interchangeable needle set, this will be a piece of cake with having to swap out these cord lengths and things. If you don't, then I do recommend that you check out these. So having 12-inch circular needles for needle sizes 1, 2, and 3. And that's because we're using all 3 needle sizes for the top part here as we get started, which is a smaller circumference. And then as we start increasing, then you'll probably want to size up to a 16-inch cord as we start increasing more and getting into the body. And then double pointed needles or 9 to 12-inch needles or 36-inch plus cables, basically for working the sleeves. So whatever your preferred method is or needle size for that, You could use double pointed needles for the sleeves. You could use, again, the 9 to 12 inch cord for the sleeves, depending on how big your sleeves are. Excuse me. Or you could do magic loop, which I personally hate. So I try to use, oh my gosh, excuse me. So I try to use the 9 to 12 inch needles for my sleeves, but magic loop is an option for that too. And for tools, we need 8 different stitch markers, ideally in one design. Sorry, there's like a little fly right here. And then you'll need 1 unique for your beginning of round marker, tapestry needle, scissors, measuring tape, you know, the usual. Let me just see what we got. Sorry, question came through. Can you confirm whether the cord length is inclusive of the needle tips? Yeah, so this is actually a really good question. So from my experience, when someone says 12 to 16 inch needles, that is including the needle tip size. And I'm pretty sure that's like the standard across the board. I could be wrong. I could be very wrong. But that's how I am including, like, that's how I'm talking about it. So if I say 12 inch needles, the cord lengths are usually smaller, but with the needles, it ends up being 12 inch, for example. So I hope that answered. Oh, and look at that. Martina's doubling down on what I just said. I think it is standard, but could be wrong. It is confusing as a newer, like for newer knitters too. Miriam is asking which brand sells 12 inch. Not really a fan of Magic Loop either. If anyone has recommendations for Miriam, please drop them in the comments, because I'm now a knitting needle, interchangeable knitting needle set kind of person, so I don't really have good recommendations, but I'm pretty sure that you can get, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of advocating for Amazon, but if you want to just search on Amazon, I'm sure you could find something. And if anyone has any specific recommendations, drop them in the comments. Okay, yarn. So again, you can use any weight yarn for this pattern. This kind of gives you, for amount of yarn needed, it gives you an estimate. I shouldn't say slight estimate, but it gives you an estimate of how much yarn you should need based on your bust size and what weight yarn you are using. But with the update, I'll actually show you it. No, I'll wait till the end. With the update, it will have a better looking version of this, and there's also a way to calculate how much yarn you should need based on your unique gauge, which is pretty cool. So abbreviations, these are pretty standard. So I kind of use these abbreviations throughout the pattern. If you ever get confused, come back to this page. And also this technique section is super, super helpful. So all of these reference videos on this side have links that accompany like these instructions or whatever the technique is, really helpful YouTube videos that go along with each. So if you're stuck on something and you're like, you don't want to either reach out in the Discord or email me, or if you just want to try to figure it out yourself, same as the time, you want an instant answer, I highly recommend checking out these videos first. They're super, super helpful. And I try to give, again, I think the teacher in me is trying to give you as much guidance as possible. I've definitely knitted patterns before where they're like, do the, I don't know, I'm just gonna even make something up. Do the ribs cast on or something like that. And I'm like, how do I do that? And there's like no reference, no instructions. So I really like to, again, if anyone has any questions, I try to answer it in the pattern as best as I can. So this is where things start getting a little different than what you are likely used to. Let me just see. Let me check for questions for a second. Oh, sorry. Miriam's question was, I just need the cords, LOL, not the full needles. That makes more sense. I also use like interchangeable needles. So I use my Collage Square interchangeable needles, but my very first needle set was the Lick Driftwood set. And these actually came with some smaller cords. So I use this set quite often and I love them. So that's cool that you use them too. Highly recommend. Let me just see. Oh, perfect. Yeah, Deb, I'm going to mention this soon too. But yeah, in the Discord also, people have been so helpful at like, if you do have a question, if you just ask it in the Discord, people have been answering the best they can, or just answering, not even just saying the best they can. But and somebody provided an alternate video of how to swatch in the round without having all of the strands in the back, which was super helpful. I could add that one as well, Deb. You're absolutely right. Oh, that's a good note too, Busy Beaver. She uses just DPNs for small circumferences, and you can usually get them pretty cheap. So cool. Okay, let me go back to the pattern here. I know it's already 12:50. I've been talking for so long. Thank you so much for everyone who's still here. Again, I was hoping to have this wrapped up by like 1, but we'll just kind of, we're going to be here until we finish doing what we need to do. So, okay, for gauge. So honestly, I know gauge is such a touchy subject. Like so many people hate doing gauge. I am here to tell you that gauge is so important, especially, I want to say especially for my patterns, because basically the whole design is based off of your unique gauge. But honestly, all of this applies to any other knitting project you do in order to make sure you set yourself up for success so you don't make something that's too big or too small. You must do a gauge swatch. Everyone's gauge is different. Depending on the needles that you use, your gauge can become smaller or bigger. Like there's so many factors that play into gauge, and it's super important to do a gauge swatch. And actually, if you want to learn more, I actually gave like a presentation talk thing for a summit called the Knit Your Wardrobe Summit a few months back on the importance of gauge. And I wrote some blog posts on it that basically broke down what my presentation was. And I've linked them, I believe, in the description below. If not, I will add it after. But if you want to learn more about gauge, it's all there. But we're going to be diving into gauge a lot next week. So up to you. But anyway, for gauge swatching, this is super important. You're going to be doing your gauge swatch with needle size 1, as we talked about earlier. And you want to do it in the round to get the most accurate gauge swatch. Because I have actually, for a project that was knit in the round before, I have done a flat swatch. And I basically learned the hard way that I'm not going to do that again, because my swatch ended up being off. And I was knitting a hat, ended up like, I think it was like way too big. So I've learned to just start doing it in the round, and I'll show you how to do that step by step next week. We'll be knitting our gauge swatches together. So, but one important part here, in case you're like ahead of the game and you're starting to plug your numbers into the pattern, then make sure to divide your gauge swatch for this pattern here by 4, because we're looking for stitches per 1 inch and rounds per 1 inch. So I recommend you do your gauge swatch. It's ideally like 5 inches, 6 inches even. So you have a little extra room on the sides, and those stitches in the middle and those rows in the middle are going to be the most accurate to measure. So you measure the 4 inches or the 10 centimeters, and you divide that by 4, and that should give you your stitches per inch and your rounds per inch. So I've seen a lot of times people won't divide it by 4, and they'll plug in what the gauge is by 4 inches. And then they'll be like, why do I have to cast on 300 stitches? So if that happens to you, it's likely that you have to divide your gauge by 4, just so you know. Yeah, I know. I'm so scared of gauging. I'm so glad we're doing this. There's nothing to be scared about, I promise. But yeah, we will do it together. And blocking the gauge is so important. So true. Let me see. Oh, that is such a good idea. That's so cute. I love the idea of repurposing your gauges. Gauge swatches, I should say. Okay, so let's move on. Measuring your body, right? Okay, I've been getting lots of questions about how to measure in the Discord. And lots of people are like, I've never really had to measure. They don't really know how to do it. So I'm going to run through this with you and just kind of demonstrate how to measure what you need to measure. I've got my nifty measuring tape with me for this. It's from Twice Your Cheap, and it's really cute. It's like really satisfying to pull and suck back in. But we need to measure our head circumference, neck circumference, bust, upper arm circumference, and raglan seam length. So for head circumference, let me show you basically how to do it. Let me see if it, can I make myself bigger here? You know what? Yeah, let me just go back to me for now, and I'll show you how to measure. So to measure your head, actually, let me push my hair, drop my measuring tape. Okay. But to measure your head, you just need to wrap your measuring tape around your head. Super easy, I know. And you want it to go like across your forehead and over your ears. So you don't want it on top of your ears. You want it over your ears, if that makes sense. And then do that. Don't have your finger in the way. And then just measure that measurement. Again, the circumference, right? So that would be your head measurement. And for your neck measurement, let me just make sure I have like, yeah. For the neck measurement, wrap the measuring tape around the middle of your neck. And do that. Again, just do that. Again, we're doing circumference, so that would be your neck measurement. And just so you know, the reason why we do both the head and the neck is the way I calculate the neck, like the collar length, is by taking basically an average between those two measurements. So you should be able to like, it'll fit over your head nicely, but it'll still be nice and close to your neck. I prefer like a high neckline. So apologies if you prefer not so high of a neckline. There isn't really a way to make it a little bigger, except, as I said earlier, by expanding your GSRs. But anyway, that's why we're taking these measurements. For the bust, you want to measure it across your bust, or around your bust, I should say. So you want to do that in a way where it falls at nipple level. Hopefully that doesn't get me banned or something. But I also recommend, as you're doing that, to wear or not wear whatever it is you usually wear or not wear. So if you typically wear a bra, wear whatever usual bra you wear as you take your measurement. And yeah, if you wear a binder, wear that and take your measurement with that on. So that way the tee fits you as you want it to. Swoop there. Okay. For the upper arm circumference, you'll want to do that like, how do I say it? Wrap the measuring tape around your bicep about half the way between, between your shoulder and your elbow. I say between your should and your elbow. So you want to wrap it, again, circumference, do it like right here, take that measurement, and that's so we get a nice fitted sleeve. And raglan seam length is definitely the toughest measurement. So what I recommend doing for this, it's a little bit different. Like some people, okay, let me explain how to do this. So basically, I find the most accurate way to get your raglan seam measurement is with this method where you take, scrap yarn, string, and you tie it around your body and under your armpits, like right up in there, okay? I know it's a little silly feeling, but just do that, tie it off. I tie it just with a knot, and we just want it to create a nice line for us. So yeah, that looks good. And then you take your measuring tape and you put your measuring tape at the start, right where your shoulder meets your neck, like right in the middle, kind of where your collar would be. And you measure it down your body and down to that string. So where the measuring tape meets the string is your raglan seam length measurement. So for me, that's at 7. And yeah, I found that to be the most accurate. Actually, the first two samples of the Staple Tee that I made, I ended up having, I got like 10 inches. And that's because I tried measuring. I think there's alternate ways to measure where you measure basically along the raglan seam and down to your armpit like this. And it's just, I find that it created a lot of issues. And my test knitters also were getting some varying measurements that weren't super accurate. So yeah, I just recommend this way. I think it's the easiest and the most accurate. But yeah, so that's it for that. And if you are making a surprise gift, I do want to point out that, oh, let me go back to sharing my screen. Let me see, how do I do that? So that one, no, sorry, bear with me. I'm gonna remove and then add to stage. There we go. Okay, so if you're making a surprise gift, I do have this chart here with basic measurements for people. So that way you can kind of just like plug in average measurements. If you know that someone's a medium, for example, that chart should have some good guidance for you on what to do there. This also gives you a visual on how to do all the measurements we just went over. And this is where you will plug in all of your things. So let me go back up to gauge too, because like this is where you also will be typing in. So say your gauge is 7. So this is the cool part, right? Say your gauge is 7 and stitches per inch and then 10 rounds per inch. You just plug those in there. And then for measuring your measurements, you plug those in here too. So say it's 20, I think mine's like 12, 34, 10, 7. So I think those are all my measurements. Pretty crazy. I've got those memorized at this point. The number bank should automatically fill out. And all of the rest of the pattern, like this was all blank before, but all of that automatically fills in, blah, 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 blah. And I'll go through this more too. If nothing pops up for you after you plug in your gauge and your measurements, what I recommend doing, this happens all the time. What I recommend doing is exiting out of Adobe, because you, again, should be in Adobe. If you're not, that might be the problem. But exiting out of Adobe and re-downloading the pattern, opening the pattern up again in Adobe, and just trying again. It's basically like turn it off and on again kind of situation. And also one thing that I found kind of helps is if you hit enter or tab after you plug in each input, and that will likely fix the problem. If not, hit me up, I'll help you out. All right, I see some other questions coming through. McKinney asks, is your stomach/hips area, if your stomach/hips area is wider than your true bust, should you use a larger number? I'm so glad you asked that, because yes, I've had some people like ask me that exact question, and I made sure I had a few testers that had that situation. So that way we could test it out before I release the pattern. And yes, if you have a larger stomach than bust, then I recommend whatever the largest measurement is on your torso, use that as your quote unquote bust measurement. And that should work just fine. Oh, Kira, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. I'm so glad that you like that, because anyway, I'm so glad you found that helpful. And Patricia, what is the approximate ease allotment? It might also be easy for folks to measure a raglan they already have. Yes, thank you, because I was going to say that, and thank you for bringing that up. So another way to check for a raglan seam length is to compare it to, I would recommend that if you have a shirt that you like the fit of, and it's like more of a fitted shirt ideally, then you can just measure the raglan seam length on that, if it's also ideally a raglan seam, and use that as reference. With the ease, it could get a bit tricky. It does. I would definitely recommend my first recommendation is to just take your own measurement for that. I think it'll be the most accurate. And I would do that, and then also just like compare it to what the shirt measurement is, if it's larger or bigger. I don't really have a good answer for that, but yeah, you could probably subtract the ease. I don't know. Yeah, because I've got a little bit of ease worked into it. I guess it would be, it's a little tricky. Basically, my best tip is just to take your own measurement for it. I think it will be the most accurate to get a good fitting tee. Cool. Okay, so let me just go quickly over, I know we're getting into 105, but let me go over the number bank. So this is just kind of here as a reference. You really shouldn't need it much. And the increase planning. So this is, we'll go into this in more detail, but all of the numbers here are going to be dependent on what you inputted above. And all the numbers that you see for the rest of the pattern, same deal. It's all dependent on what you've inputted above. So I just want to say real quick that basically, as we increase the body and sleeves separately, as I mentioned before, to create that kind of fitted sleeve look, so we make sure that the bust fits well and our sleeves fit perfectly, we're going to be increasing them separately. So that's why you have a separate increase plan for your body and for your sleeves. Now, sometimes, as you'll see down here, this is like, basically, whenever I have to increase or do an increase plan, I always write out like, okay, increase, knit, knit, increase, knit, knit, just for myself, and then I'll cross it out. So I basically applied that to this pattern so that it automatically fills in and you don't have to do that work. And this is, again, all dependent on what you included up here. This increase plan matches what this says here, just so you know. So like, for example, increase the body section every 2 rounds, 24 times. You'll see, okay, we're increasing every 2 rounds for 24 times, and then we're going to increase it once every 16 times. So every row, we're going to be increasing for 16 rows or rounds. So the tricky thing here that gets a little confusing, and that's why we're going to be working on it together in the GSR and the increase plan live stream, is that you don't always increase at the same time or in the same round. So the first round, everyone increases at the same time. So you increase the body and the sleeves, and that is standard for everyone who is using this pattern. But then it's after that, row 2 is when we start getting into the custom stuff. So here, I have a super easy round. I'm knitting, I'm not increasing at all, and I'm just working on my German short row. Round 3, I'm doing a German short row, but I'm increasing only the body, which means that I only increase in the body sections, and I would not increase in the sleeve sections. I would knit instead. So we'll go into that in more detail, but once you get the hang of it, it's really easy. It's just a little overwhelming to look at, I think, in the beginning. Cool. Sorry, I just saw a question come in from Miriam. Do I just download a blank again and add in a new gauge? Are you saying, Miriam, like say you want to make a second tee, for example, that has a different gauge? I would recommend saving, like making a copy of the pattern, whether you hit save as, like the way I kind of do it is I'll save, say I input my measurements, I do all the things, and I'm making a staple tee with a certain yarn, or like it's a green yarn. I'll say green staple, I'll save it as the green staple tee. And then if I'm making one for, doing a tee, I'll save that one separately. So you should be able to just download it again. I think there's also a way you can just hit save as and it'll just make a copy and stuff like that. So yes, I totally recommend doing that. And I do that all the time when knitting with my patterns. Okay, so that's a little bit about the increases. I also go into detail on how like these are the stitch markers we'll be using, the titles and what they mean. And we'll just go into this a bit more later, I think. I don't want to get too into the weeds. And then we get into the pattern. And I'm just going to scroll through because we'll go through this all piece by piece with each live stream. And the reference section of this pattern, I think, is super nifty. So I wanted to include this because In this version of the pattern, again, like it doesn't have that yarn estimation for how much yarn you'll need or what kind of yarn to use. So I had such amazing testers for this pattern. And I just included photos of their staple tee along with what their measurements were, what yarn they used, how much yarn they used, what their needle size was. So this is like a bunch of inspiration that you can just take a look at if you are feeling a little lost of what you want your tee to look like. It's a really, really good resource. But that's about it for the pattern. Before I exit out of this, let me know if you have any other questions. And I see one question come through. I may have missed this. My chart isn't populating. I closed it and reopened, but no luck. Can I calculate myself? So I'm guessing if your chart isn't populating, the rest of the information throughout the pattern is likely also not populating. I don't recommend calculating yourself. So I kind of want to show you guys what the back end of this of my pattern looks like. So let me actually remove this and stop screen, present, share screen. So just so you know, like the brains behind the pattern is all of this math. And there's just like math formulas all throughout, just an Excel sheet. And that's, again, the brains behind the pattern. So it's not super simple to just calculate it yourself, unfortunately. But let me stop my screen there. To try it again, I recommend, I get that you closed it and reopened it. I would recommend quitting Adobe if you didn't try that and re-downloading the pattern, and then open that in Adobe and try hitting enter or tab when you put in your inputs, and that usually works. But let me know if you keep having issues with it. One thing I also forgot to mention is, in case you're feeling a little lost with yarn, because I love having the creative freedom of using any yarn that you want, but I know that can be a little overwhelming. And especially for like newer beginners who like aren't super familiar with like how certain yarns behave, for example. So I created a resource. It's linked in the description below if you go to like more details and resources for the knit along. And there is a blog that kind of talks about how different types of fibers, like animal-based fibers, wool, for example, plant-based fibers like cotton, and synthetic fibers like acrylic, those kind of, if you choose one of those, I kind of give tips on how that will impact your final result of the tee. And I also give some good recommendations for different type of cottons and cotton blends for the staple tee as well, in case you are interested. I only kind of gave cotton blends because that's in the zone I'm in. I was like not frantically, I just get kind of obsessive, especially when it comes to yarn and choosing the perfect yarn. And so I was like searching to find the perfect yarn for this knit along for me. And as I was doing that, I was like, oh, I should compile this for other people. So I basically put all of the options that I was considering and that I was looking up into that blog post. So if you still need to order your yarn or buy your yarn, go check that out. It's a really good resource. And I use, again, it's mainly plant-based cotton yarns or cotton blends. So that way it's a nice summer tee that won't be too hot. It'll be nice and breathable. So the yarn I chose actually is from Pearl Soho. I kind of splurged on this. I was like, this is like a gift to myself. I'm really excited about it. But it's plain, I think it's pronounced plain air, and it's Pearl Soho. And this color, it's kind of like an avocado green. I have a tank top that I bought in this pattern, or in this same exact color. It's literally the same exact color, which is what I was going for. And I'm so glad when it arrived in the mail. I was like, yes, I compared it. And it's like the same exact. And I love wearing that tank top. I wear blue jeans all the time. And so I love having a good color that's like summery, but that also goes really well with jeans. I love knitting with blue, but like blue and then blue jeans, they kind of sometimes clash, or like I like a little bit more of a contrast. So I'm definitely like a blue and green kind of person. So I got this green, and it is 67% wool and then 33% organically grown cotton. And it was, I think, in the like, I honestly don't remember how much I spent. I think I bought more yarn than I needed to. Actually, after it arrived, I was like, ooh, I don't know if I need this much. But it's a really soft. I'm really excited to have the blend because I love knitting with wool. It's my favorite type of yarn to work with. I love the drape of it as well. But I like being in the DC area. I'm in Alexandria, Virginia. It's really muggy. We're into the muggy summer kind of already. So I want something that is also really breathable and kind of light. So I think this will be a really good yarn for what I was looking for. And I might even be trying to knit 2 staple tees at the same time, because when we get into the live streams, I'll want to not knit everything live, or else some of our live streams will be like hours long. So to try to keep it at an hour, I might have 2 staple tees going at the same time. We'll see. But the other yarn I was considering using is 100% superwash merino from Woolen Works. And I've actually learned since I bought this that I don't love superwash the most, but I love Woolen Works yarn. She is a yarn dyer in Australia, and she just rocks. She's an awesome person. Highly recommend you check her out on Instagram if you don't know her. But this colorway is called Blurple. I bought it like, I think 2 years ago at this point from her. And I think it would be a really good staple tee option. I'm actually kind of dreaming about a staple tee and short set. I don't have a short pattern out now, but this is kind of inspiring me to make shorts to kind of have a dedicated set. Anyway, I think we covered it all. Let me just check my notes here. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. Yep, I talked about yarn options. Oh, that's totally cool, Patricia. She says, I hope this is okay to share, but I came across this budget yarn spreadsheet by Jessie Maid, who I love. I love Jessie May. That may be useful for everyone. So yeah, if you want to drop that, honestly, Patricia, I think you're in the Discord. If you want to drop that in the Discord as well as here, that would be amazing. I love, again, that's totally okay. All the options. I love all the options. Okay, let me see if any other questions roll in, but let me just summarize. So today's session, we covered all the details of the knit along. Again, you can access the blog with all of the knit along details at any time if you ever are like, what's going on? Oh, thank you, Patricia, dropping in the Discord. Sorry, I had that shout so quickly. But what I was saying, oh, the blog. Yes, you can access the blog with all the knit along details at any time. And that's, again, newwavenknitting.com/staple-t-KAL. And I'll be posting, again, regular updates on what we've covered in the live. But that first blog there that has all the details about prizes and dates and things like that, good resource to keep in mind. We talked about the pattern and the pattern run through. I hope I answered all the questions that everyone came here with today. And also, if you have any questions that come up, join the Discord and I'll answer them as quickly as I can. Oh, for next week's knit along, we'll be swatching in the round. So if you've never swatched in the round before, I highly recommend you come along. Bring your yarn, bring your needles, needle size option 1. And I'm going to be working, I think what I'll do is I will start a new swatch. So we'll have, we'll be working on our new swatches together. And I'm going to have another one that's like almost done. So that way I can just finish the swatch with you. Because, swatches kind of take a while. And I'll finish the swatch with you to show you what it's like. And I think I'll be able to even set up the blocking of it on the live stream. So that's what we're going to be covering next week. And yeah, thank you so much all for being here. Like, we've kind of kept a steady number this whole time. Team Live. I appreciate you so much, and you asked great questions. Like, this was so helpful. Josie, she's asking, will we be discussing best cast-on methods? I am going to teach you when we get to the cast-on live stream in 2 weeks. Next week's watching, week after that, we're casting on. And I will show you, I have like kind of a special way to cast on for this that allows us to skip provisional cast on. So yes, I will be going over that. Brooke, Busy Beaver Brooke, more ideas for yarn on Ravelry if you want to see other projects? Yes. If you go check out the Staple Tee too, there's other projects. Yeah, I think that's what you're referring to. Yes. Lots of inspiration on Ravelry. Oh, I'm so glad you found it helpful, Noni. Thank you for being here. Will bulky yarn be weird with the folded neck, etc.? That's a good question. I had a couple of knitters use bulky weight yarn, and theirs actually turned out pretty dang good. Actually, let me show you this super quick. Share screen, share screen. This test knitter here, for example, used bulky merino, and I love her tee so much. Let me see if I can actually zoom in. But you'll see the collar, oh my gosh, the collar looks pretty dang good. And again, all the rows and stuff will adjust based on your measurement. So I think bulky would be just fine. So I hope that helps. And remove, stop screen. Last thing I want to say is if you haven't signed up yet, please sign up for the knit along. That way you can get entered to win prizes and you'll get access to the Discord, and you will get that 25% off coupon for the pattern, which again expires end of day today. So go ahead, if you haven't gotten the pattern yet, sign up, get that discount code, and go get the pattern. And yeah, again, if you have any other questions, once you sign up, drop them in the Discord, and I'll be there all week. So, and for the rest of the knit along, of course. But I'll be answering questions, and other knitters are in there too, and they are happy to help as well. It's a great community in there. It's been really positive and sweet so far. So thank you all so much for being here. Happy knitting, and I will see you next week.